Welcome to the Chronicle Take 2, the podcast which continues to chat from the Chronicle, the official film podcast of the People's Movies. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Paul, your host and the editor of the People's Movies. And once again, joining me is Sean Wilson. How are you, Sean?
Very good, Paul. Thanks for having me back on.
You're welcome. Well, we both did episode 50, which is still available at your favourite place to get your podcast and also over at thepeoplesmovies.com, which is the episode is all about the Spinal Tap 2 and the Long Walk. But this episode, which is take 2, we will be reviewing, is One Battle After Another, and that is the film with Paul Thomas Anderson. Sean, would you like to tell us a little bit about it and if you liked it or didn't like it?
Shall I do a brief overview of the story, such as it is?
Yeah, probably because I have to admit, when I was listening to, as I mentioned before, when I walked to work, I get podcasts in, and there was a Paul Thomas Anderson interview. I think it was actually in the Kermode Mail, and they were saying maybe and I've mentioned it here, maybe the actual official synopsis is a bit of a spoiler.
Yeah,
Be as brief as you can. Folks, as was said in every episode, there will be some spoilers. Maybe not done deliberately, but sometimes they have to be done deliberately. It's just how things are. We do apologise if they are.
basically written and directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, starring Leonardo DiCaprio in his first collaboration with Anderson. So Paul Thomas Anderson, director of like Boogie Nights, Magnolia, There Will Be Bloods, Phantom Thread, Licorice Pizza, Punch Drunk Love, which is my personal favourite film of his. So stars Leonardo DiCaprio as Bob Ferguson, who's an ex-revolutionary. He was once part of this group called the French 75, who make the mistake of getting on the wrong side of Colonel Stephen Lockjaw, played by Sean Penn, when they're liberating a group of detainees from a migrant center on the US-Mexico border. Basically, Bob is in a relationship with his fellow revolutionary member, Perfidia Beverly Hills, played by Teyana Taylor. Effectively, he and Perfidia have a child who grows up to be played by Chase Infiniti, who's really, really good. So the daughter's called
Yeah.
Willa, as I said, played by Chase Infiniti. The story then jumps ahead several years when Perfidia has disappeared seemingly at Lockjaw's hands. Bob and Willa have gone to ground, as have the rest of the members of the French 75. Lockjaw then comes back after them. He specifically wants Bob and Willa specifically. He seems to have, a vendetta against both of them. And the reason is because Lockjaw wants to become part of this like Freemason style group called the Christmas Adventurers, which is basically a group of old, crusty white supremacist men who make these appalling political and military decisions while sequestered in the basements of suburban houses. I think that probably pushes a few buttons
Yeah.
in today's climate. And so what happens is Willa is kidnapped, and Bob has to go after his daughter. But the problem is, in the intervening years, Bob has become a completely idiotic stoner and alcoholic, and can't remember basic things like code words over the phone. So when he calls his ex-revolutionary members and he's asked what the time is, he can't remember what it is. And all he wants to do is basically rescue his daughter from Lockjaw's nefarious clutches. And what then follows is he teams up with Willa's karate teacher Sensei, played by Benicio del Toro, who is the calm antithesis to Bob's mania. Like, Bob becomes increasingly manic and frantic and increasingly overwrought in his pursuit to go and find his daughter. So there's that little plot synopsis. Says to me, I've tried my best to skirt around
No,
plots.
you did well.
Is because there's a lot to spoil, isn't there? There's a lot
Yeah,
of
there is.
story.
There is. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very contradictory film. It's a Paul Thomas Anderson film. It's very contradictory and deliberately so. I think that's part of the pleasure of it.
Let's just say, folks, I wasn't a fan of Licorice Pizza, his last film. I just didn't like it at all. And the funny thing is, that I've been hearing a lot of reviews, the people who hated Vice are loving this. But I loved Inherent Vice because obviously I think it must be the noir side. I love it. I didn't over love it. I enjoyed the sort of noir side of things. They're loving this. I enjoyed this. So much going on in it. It's certainly a vast improvement on Licorice Pizza. I liked how it was done in Vista Vision. which the last film that we saw when that was The Brutalist.
Oh yes,
Uh,
of course. I'd forgotten that was in Vision. Yeah, of course it
yeah.
was. Yeah. Yeah.
So if anyone is wondering what Vista Vision is, because they probably hear it, it's quite a hip type thing. I've written like an official description here, so you can see I've been doing my homework. And Vista Vision is the sort of 35 millimeter format where the film stock sort of runs horizontally through the camera instead of vertically. So obviously each frame 8 perforations wide, and it sort of creates a much larger negative. So roughly double the surface area of standard sort of 35 frame. So you're probably talking like your, like your Reservoir Dogs and things like that. Hateful Eight, they were all done like this as well. And the result is they're quite stunning, basically visually stunning because the fine grain clarity sort of punches above the sort of the 30 sort of 5 millimeter class, and that's reasonably how a lot of filmmakers love it. No, is it gives them much more. It shows much more information. If you think about it, it's probably the original IMAX, I would say, of the 1950s, because that's the golden age of Hollywood movies, because that's when it also came out, because they were, at the time, if you think about it, Sean, they were battling TV then,
Yeah.
and
So
were much,
they had to come out with all these super widescreen formats in the 50s, and they to counteract the threat of TV, which is,
yeah.
yeah, like you say, that's kind of where we are now, isn't it, really, with streaming?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And it makes everything bigger and better. And Paramount, I think they were the first that done it. It's a spherical, anaphoric format. That's for anyone that's a photographer. Format, it archived everything, the widescreen sheer image look. So White Christmas is a perfect one. 1954, and it getting excitement to the viewers and that. And obviously, a lot of auteurs like to use it, like Hitchcock. He used it quite a lot for 5 films, like Vertical, North by Northwest. John Ford used it, like The Searchers. And you can see how visually beautiful it was there as well. And it's very high adaptable, with the sort of aspect ratios, like your 166, your 2, and 0, 1. What that did was that let theatres choose the best fitting. A lot of theatres in the old days, depending on the format, had to reseat their theatres, their cinemas, to help things to work. Nowadays, the technology's even better now. In Las Vegas, they've got virtually, is it AI restored the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
That wonderful theatre that they're going on about. I obviously I've never been to Vegas, but I might be 50-year old, but I sometimes still watch the wrestling. I do apologise, folks. And
I mean, I have been to Vegas and I didn't see that, and I
yeah.
regret going to Vegas and not seeing that.
I
Yeah.
heard it's very expensive. I believe
Yeah.
it might have been about $300 just for the movie.
Yeah.
I
Yeah. It
think I'd
doesn't
have a go on
surprise me.
holiday. Yeah, I'd have a
Yeah.
go to one of the casinos and just spend my money there.
Yeah.
But so
Yeah.
basically, it's a bit of a trendy thing nowadays. The format, and that's why the sort of visual beauty of the film is really really good. I think there's a lot of tropes that we saw in The Long Walk that actually resonate with this. Not necessarily with the war type things, the sort of a side battling for justice type thing. Is it French 75? Paul Thomas Anderson says he sort of the Weather Underground that sort of inspired them, and the Weather Underground, they were a sort of far left wing political group who terrorised, if you like to say, America. But I think when it comes to films and with political groups like that, vigilante groups, whatever you want to call them, you could go by either side of the political fence,
Yeah.
left or right, type thing.
Yeah. Terrorized or liberated, depending on one's point of view, isn't it?
Exactly,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly.
It's,
And I don't know if the film is maybe come out at a bad time for it because with a certain individual who was assassinated.
I agree. I agree with you when you say I think it's whether deliberately or accidentally that it's a
Uh,
film for the moment. And
yeah,
I did see an interview with Paul Thomas Anderson where he was like, "Look, I didn't set out to make a
yeah,
political film," and I'm like, "Well, whether you set out to make one or not, you have made a deeply political film." And I think it
yeah,
shows that films take on a life that their creator doesn't necessarily intend half the time. And we should say that because you mentioned Inherent Vice earlier, so Paul Thomas Anderson adapted Inherent Vice from the novel by Thomas Pynchon. This is ostensibly One Battle After Another is ostensibly adapted from Vineland by Thomas Pynchon, although apparently very loosely. I haven't read either book.
Yeah.
I didn't like Inherent Vice that much, but I know what you mean. I can see that stoner absurdist comedy Inherent Vice is definitely in this. When you get Leonardo DiCaprio tapping into his real comic abilities when he's wearing a bathrobe and shades and just like stumbling around all over the place, and he's on the phone like desperately just trying to convince his
Yeah.
former comrades that I am who I say I am, even if I can't answer the code that you're giving me. And then Benicio del Toro at one point just casually slips in the answer, and Bob doesn't hear it.
Yeah.
So I think there are those absurdist Inherent Vice touches in that. I think a lot of it did remind me of the mania of Punch Drunk Love, which is my favorite Paul Thomas Anderson film. I mean, that's only 90 minutes, and that's got an extraordinary performance from Adam Sandler, who, he doesn't appear to be doing anything different from his other comedies. It's just that he's in the hands of a director who knows what he's doing for once. And I love Punch Drunk Love. I think it's brilliant. I think there are tropes of that in One Battle After Another as well. I think you've also got the desert landscapes of There Will Be Blood up to a point, particularly in
Yeah.
the second half of this. But I think it doesn't just feel. The great thing about Paul Thomas Anderson is every single film he makes feels absolutely unique. It doesn't feel like a collage of other Paul Thomas Anderson movies. I'm just bringing that up
Yeah.
for a bit of analysis. But this is such a thrillingly unique experience. It's unlike anything I've seen this year. But it's a Paul Thomas Anderson movie. It's $130 million budgeted absurdist political stoner action comedy. I'm really, really delighted that he got it made at that budget. I mean, one can only assume that, as people have said, it was the Leonardo DiCaprio factor, right? Got that budget greenlit because it's a weird film, but I mean that in as a compliment. I mean weird as in like unique, and I think I see so many films now that adhere to so many tiresome formulas. This movie is not interested in adhering to formula at all. It's completely unpredictable. And I think that's entirely to its credit to actually get a movie where you don't know where it's going. I think I applaud Paul Thomas Anderson and the cast and crew for that.
Definitely, the absurdity was, I think, was tiptoeing into something that maybe the Coen brothers would go into with their
Yeah,
early stuff, or even Terry Gilliam.
yeah. I can
His
see that.
absurdity was very weird. DiCaprio going about in his dressing gown. It was like something out of an American version of Hitchhiker's Guide, you know.
Yeah, yeah, or the Big Lebowski. I thought the
Big
Big if
Lebowski,
yeah,
yeah.
if the dude had been an ex-revolutionary and had stumbled into like some sort of conspiracy, that was where my mind went. But yeah, absolutely, Hitchhiker's Guide as well. Yeah, totally. Yeah,
And plus, both Bob and the dude were stoners and they were
yeah,
alcoholics as well, you know.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, there's a lot of that in there, and I think how a lot of the comedy work, as you mentioned in the last episode, it's the soundtrack.
Mm.
Johnny Greenwood's soundtrack is very simple, very effective, and he did the Inherit Vice. He's done a lot of Paul Thomas Anderson's
Yeah, this is Johnny
scores.
Greenwood, isn't it? We're talking about yeah, Johnny Greenwood. Yeah, who's a
Yeah,
genius. Who's just
the Radiohead, you know,
yeah.
and like, I'm quite surprised that they're back together again. I thought it was going to be just a smile, you know. And it's sort of a lot of weird woodblock chimes, you know,
Mm.
some very Japanese sounding, you know, and it gave me that sort of odd, absurd feel to the film. But when it went to a certain place up in the hills, out in the desert, it sort of moved into sort of Spike Lee, you know.
There's kind of like there are like noir overtones in the score, aren't there? Particularly like you see
Yeah,
later on, I think, yeah, that's actually I didn't think about that. Yeah, about how it sounds like Terence Blanchard's work for Spike Lee. And now you say it, yeah, I can
yeah,
hear that. But also the very low register piano that which is used as like the driving force in the score that Johnny Greenwood uses as the driving force in the score. That piano is like omnipresent all over the place.
yeah,
And I think I did my own personal review of it, and I said the score sounds like conspiracy master David Shire's work on an acid trip, and it's got that paranoid, the score's got a very tightly wound paranoid atmosphere, which owes a debt to like 70s thriller scores, but goes in its completely
yeah,
absurdist direction. And then there's a bit, I mean, the bit around when Bob has to basically effectively unhook himself from this stoner lifestyle and leap into action to rescue his daughter. There is like a 20-minute protracted sequence where the music just doesn't stop, and
Yeah,
it goes and it goes and it goes. And I think so many movies now awkwardly edit their scores, they truncate their scores and they chop them up and according to like the physical edit of the movie. And I really applaud Paul Thomas Anderson having the confidence in his composer to just go, right, this scene is going to be carried by the music. The music isn't going to stop. So it's almost like the music informs the scene rather than the other way around. Like you don't get that very much now. I mean, I suppose back in the
yeah,
day, Sergio Leone and Ennio Morricone would have done something like that, like
yeah,
maybe a few others. But, just that formal. What I like about Paul Thomas Anderson is that the technique is very formal. You can see the technique and you can hear it as well with the music. It's craft. It's real
yeah,
craft, even if it is in the service of a story that's completely eccentric and completely mad. Just the craft of the filmmaking in front of and behind the camera is amazing. And yeah, Johnny Greenwood's score has just got this really twitchy, paranoid quality like, all the way through, and it's got empathetic touches as well. There are scenes between Bob and Willa, his daughter, where the score does calm down, and you get these more elegiac moments. I mean, they're relatively fleeting, but they are there. I mean, I love Johnny Greenwood's work with Paul Thomas Anderson. I love the work that he did on Phantom Thread. I thought that was beautiful.
yeah. It was, it
Really
was.
lovely score. But yeah, I think the music is a key driving force in the success of this film.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. It also reminded me, well, obviously, Phantom Thread, but it's more orchestral,
Yeah,
and this was more, the little noises.
yeah,
It reminded
yeah,
me of Mika Levy with Under the Skin,
yeah, yeah,
which had that similar sort of wooden blocks. And then she went to Jackie when she won the Oscar, and it was more orchestral.
yeah, yeah.
She basically
There's lots of
changed.
things that like struck, aren't there? There's like a lot of
Yeah,
percussion and things that like yeah, like you say, chimes and yeah, like wood
yeah,
blocks and just like odd erratic noises, and you're like you can't quite tell was that a sound effect within the scene or was that on the score? And I love that. I love the way they
yeah,
blur the lines with that.
yeah. It was really, really, really good. With the Christmas Adventure Club and all that was just.
I mean,
I
that's
I was
hilarious, but it's very disturbing. It's very,
it
very
is.
on point now.
That would have been funny if surviving members of Monty Python came out. They were all called like
Yeah.
Eric and Nigel and
So
Reg.
the four Yorkshiremen gone bad or something.
Yeah, something like that. That was good.
Yeah.
That was good. But oh, see, Sensi's house. My
Mm.
God, the amount of rooms that he had, the secret
Yeah, yeah,
rooms.
yeah. Because I didn't mention, did I? Because Sensei is basically running an operation to help illegal migrants, isn't he? He's got them,
Yeah,
and so Sensei comes from a place of real empathy and compassion for helping migrants, which Colonel Lockjaw, Sean Penn's character, is on completely the other side of that.
yeah,
White supremacist, almost like neo-Nazi militant nationalist supremacist character, completely violent. Sean Penn plays it to the hilt. He really does.
yeah, yeah. And I think if Mark Hamill was in this, that's the character he would have played if he was
Mm,
a bit younger,
mm.
And but it looks like Sean Penn's been on the training as well, man. He's
Oh
right
yeah,
muscled
yeah.
up. Yeah,
There's that joke, isn't there, when Willa says to him, "Why is your t-shirt so tight?"
yeah,
And then she she really gets to him there. But
yeah,
you can see it's obvious that it's pushing buttons on an American landscape, and I mean you can see.
yeah,
I mean, I am surprised that when Paul Thomas Anderson said it's not political, I'm like, this is pushing every button designed to
yeah,
get conversation at the moment where everything is so febrile, everyone is at each other's throat, everything is so tribal. I find it hard to believe that he didn't intend to make this as political as it is because it just is. Like
yeah.
it's don't you think?
I know, I do, and America politically is so divisive.
Yeah.
Now you can't say anything now without the other side ramming it down your throat and
Yeah.
demanding this, and that. I think the political, even here as well. Here in the UK now,
Yeah, yeah.
it's get bad. You can't sit down with somebody and have a discussion, a debate without someone accusing you of this or that or this. And it's just gets so bad now. It's unbelievable. I actually think he plays it in both sides. He sort of makes fun of both sides. Because really, it's the up and down of the French 75 as well, and the right wing, the supremacist side of things in this film. They're not shown in a good light either. So and it's no political side is shown really good. I mean, they make the fun of all the code words and everything. Both sides use the sort of coding and that. And how and what they would do to get to where they want to get to. So do you want to round up the film and what sort of rating you want to give it?
Yeah, I saw it a couple of weeks ago, and like all Paul Thomas Anderson films, I really had to sit with it quite a while. I think I don't like to give into hyperbole, but purely based on its unique qualities and the fact that it's really political, but it's also really funny. It's really funny and it's really exciting. I'd probably give it five, I think, because it's not like anything I've seen all
Yeah.
year. I give it full credit for that. But yeah, we didn't even mention the car chase bit, the
Oh
point of
yeah,
view car
yeah,
chase bit, which is so good. I mean, that alone, like from like the bumper point of view going up and down the hills in New Mexico or wherever they are. And it's almost like you're rolling up and down on the sea, and it's a quiet car chase. You don't need Fast and the Furious style
yeah,
bombast. It's just like the camera tracking up and down from the point of view of the car, and with the engine. It's so, the idea of Paul Thomas Anderson doing an action sequence in a car chase in particular, I mean, he's never done anything like that before. Paul Thomas Anderson doesn't do action films. So it's really exciting seeing him getting to grips with that. Although I did see an interview with him where he said, well, yeah, that stuff translates well on the screen, but the stuff that I like doing is the bit with the actors. And I thought, yeah, that seems very Paul Thomas Anderson to me. He likes staging the intimate scenes, like the dialogue scenes more than he does the big scenes. But he's equally good at both in this. And it's just this big, sprawling, mad political, allegory of a film. I'd give it five. I
right,
think five. I've convinced myself.
yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with the road scene. If anyone's watched manga or anime, it's a sort of a type of scene you would see because you get up and down the hill and you see a car just ahead of you and then it disappears.
Yeah.
I believe in the interview he was asked, was that road been used before in a film? I believe it hasn't, which is unbelievable. And I believe it's in California, so it might be very close to it might be Southern California, so it could be still close to the Mexican border,
Mm.
New Mexican border, and it's that was fantastic as well, and it was a very silent scene as well, as you said. My only downside was the running time. I don't know if it's just my age. I just the bladder it was struggling to hold on. Uh,
Yeah.
I got to a certain bit and I had to give up. I'll mention it just after we stop recording. It had a lot of good things going for it. It's a vast improvement in his last film, Licorice Pizza, which had nothing going for it and it wasn't funny. It was very middling mess, that one, but this is a lot better. As I say, folks, don't need much about the synopsis. It's a bit of a spoiler. Think about it as either as the rise and fall of a political group, a father chasing his daughter, which is probably the better thing, with a lot of crazy, absurd characters around him. The only downside is he can't remember the time, and he's a bit of a stoner,
That
so
that just killed me whenever he rang up. But it's just
yeah,
like, I can't remember what the time is. I can't remember.
yeah,
That just killed me. That did. It was so funny, but it's so anxious as well because he's acting from a position of trying to save his daughter. Like he is
yeah,
sincere. So it's such a contradictory film. It is sincere and it's playful and it's ridiculous and it's absurd, yet it's also deeply serious at the same time. Yeah, what an achievement to pull that off tonally.
all says we're not going to use a Greyhawk 10 here, so we won't use that because we do know what time it is. I'm going to give it 4 stars. So there you go, folks. 4 and 5 stars for. I keep forgetting the name of the title. It's that long.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it is. It's like one battle after the other, trying to remember it. There you go, cha-ching. So, folks, so that was your take two there. Sean, thank you very much for obviously joining us again. You like to tell the folks where they can listen to you or read any of your reviews or any work you've done?
So you can find me on Instagram at Sean Film Writer, where I've got links to the various other podcasts that I do, including Frames Frame that I do with Andy Williams. We're coming up to our 250th episode soon, so we've been doing a lot of
Ooh,
that. So yeah, you can find us on Spotify if you Google Frames Frame. You can also find links to my book, The Sound of Cinema, which is an academic study of film soundtracks, hence the discussion of Johnny Greenwood here. But yeah, so if you could basically use at Sean Film Writer on Instagram as the base, and then you'll find, splinter off into different links from there.
that's great. Thank you very much. Obviously, for the Chronicle and the People's Movies, we're on at Facebook at the People's Movie, X at the People's Movies as well. We're on Instagram at the People's Movies. We're on YouTube at the People's Movies.com. Sorry, no dot, just peoplemovies.com. There you'll find episodes of this, the Take Two, the Chronicle Take Two, but also the Chronicles main episodes. There's other things here like reviews and trailers, you name it. It gets updated very, very daily. How to keep track of other episodes, the Chronicle Take Two and the Chronicle. You can sign up for the email newsletter. You'll find that over at the website. I'll try and put a link down below in the description as well. You can also show your support for the podcast and the website with Buy Me a Coffee and at PayPal. Links are obviously over at the website again, and they'll be in the description below. You can find episodes which you can share with your friend, family, on all your favourite websites to get your podcasts, like Apple, YouTube, Spotify, to name a few. As well, we're also in Podbean, so you can find us there. Sean, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you once again for you folks for joining us. Until the next time, enjoy the movies.